What's up, everybody? Welcome back into an episode of The Lawyer You Know. Happy Veterans Day to all who served. Thank you for your service. Today, we are jumping back into the Alec Murdaugh case. So many of you have had questions about the Hulu series. I've watched some of it, not all of it yet, so I can't wait to hear your take on that. But we are going to get Dick Harpootlian's take on the Hulu series. What do Alex Murdaugh and team think about that docuseries? And he's going to give a lot of insight into what is happening currently with Alec Murdaugh's case and what he thinks the outcome is going to be of this appeal and whether or not he and Jim Griffin are going to be around for trial number 2 if it happens. So many questions answered in this interview, and he is quite feisty in what he has to say and arguing with the interviewer here. So it's a pretty good conversation that we can learn from, and it's an interesting watch. So we're going to do it together. What a better way than to do it together? Make sure you guys hit that like button. Let's get to it. All right, let's pull up this interview from Court TV. That is Dick Harpootlian in the glasses. He is one of Alec Murdaugh's attorneys. I would say he was lead trial counsel for Alec Murdaugh. Very influential guy, very successful attorney. Has had plenty of other big cases. He's going to tell us about the book that he wrote. He has so much to say. And I think it's important for us for a couple of different reasons to watch this with some context. Okay. Number one, there's an appeal going on right now that has some very legitimate arguments for Alec Murdaugh, regardless of what you think about his case. The underlying cases, I should say, because he's in prison for multiple cases, multiple jurisdictions, federal and state court, serving sentences. So regardless of what you feel about him, everybody that has a legitimate problem in their case or rights are being stepped on, we feel like that wrong should be righted. Is that how it happened for Alec Murdaugh? We're still waiting to hear from an appellate court. As we sit here today, Alec Murdaugh is legally guilty of ending the life of his wife and son, among other financial crimes, and taking advantage of people that are the most vulnerable people, the most despicable of crimes. Be interested to hear what Dick Harpootlian says about those, right? He also talks a lot about his relationship with Alec Murdaugh, which I think is interesting as well. So we want to focus on the fact that there is still an appeal ongoing. So what can we find out from his lawyers? How confident are they? You know, usually lawyers know how these cases are going, and you can tell when reading between the lines, when they talk about the appeal, how confident they are with what's going to happen next. Then, as well as so many other cases, once a trial goes and it's over and you have the appeal, is there enough money to continue to pay for these lawyers? Will they continue to stay on? Will they stay on for fame, for notoriety, for money, or will they bounce off the case and will we have new lawyers? We get some of those questions answered. And then what's unusual about this case, not unusual for us since a lot of the cases that we follow are huge, high-profile cases. But while you're waiting for an appeal, while you've already done a trial once, multiple documentaries have come out. But I think this Hulu series might be the biggest one. It's not just a documentary, and I think I may have called it a docuseries. It's really not. It's a limited series that is telling the story based on true events or facts, but it's not wholly factual. I don't think it even holds itself out to be, perfect down the line with the timeline, that they're doing everything, that they only pulled from facts in the case. They've kind of admitted to taking some artistic, artistic liberties, where not everything is exactly how it happened. And so there are certain people that are going to take issue with that. And will Alec Murdaugh and his lawyers be some of those people? Now that we have the context, let's take a dive into this interview.
To you. Thanks so much for speaking with me.
Well, good morning to you, and thank you for having me on.
Certainly. So first question for you, please. How is Alec Murdaugh watching Hulu in the prison?
So there were some quotes that came out that Alec Murdaugh had a problem with the Hulu. No, I don't think it's a year ago. I think it's a new one, right? I haven't even watched the whole thing yet. I think my wife has watched it. We started it together. I was like, yeah, I already know all this stuff, but I didn't watch all of it. She's more hooked on it than I am. But you guys tell me how new it is. John said there's still 2 episodes to go. So I think it's still kind of releasing as it goes. And, I'm a new age kid now. I used to circle around the TV at 8:00 at night and not miss a premiere of a show that I really wanted to watch. Now I'm like, if all the shows aren't out, all the episodes aren't out, I'm probably not going to watch it yet. That's just kind of how I do things now. So that's why I haven't really burned through it. So yeah, I think it's new. I think it's still coming out. I don't know if all of them are out yet, but from my perspective, it's interesting when they say that Alec Murdaugh has a feel on it. And people were getting up in arms about how is he watching this? Why does he have TV? All the people that he ended their life or hurt them seriously, they're not being able to enjoy things. Why should he be able to enjoy this in prison? And he answers that question right off the bat.
He's not. And we put in our statement that he was relying on summaries or characterizations related to him by friends and family and other folks, including me.
That was going to be my next question. So you're watching that? Are you watching every episode?
No, I watched the first episode and a half, and clearly it's not based on fact. I mean, it may be based on fact, but it's not factual. And, you know, it's just like watching a Hallmark TV show that's...
All right. So Alec Murdaugh is not watching it. He is getting characterizations from people that know him, including Dick Harpootlian. And then Dick Harpootlian's going to bash the series. And when she asks, are you watching it? He has to say yes if you're going to bash it, right? But he doesn't want to give it too much credence so that people go out and watch it. So he's like, I could only get through about an episode and a half. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting, right? He doesn't want to give it too much credit. But he said it's basically a Hallmark movie. Simply fiction. Here's what I think of a Hallmark movie. You guys let me know in the chat or in the comments. Give me your definition of what you think he means or what you think of when you think of Hallmark movie. What I think of is usually bad acting or overacting, a story that is, you know, makes you kind of roll your eyes, or there's a lot of embellishments in it or hyperbole in it where it's like, yeah, right, okay. Or the same old story, you know, big city girl comes back from her job and small town boy is still at home, that they were high school sweethearts, and she has this big shot boyfriend back at home, and then she falls back in love with her sweetheart from a small town. But anyway, so that's kind of what I think of. You guys can tell me if you think of something different, but he's definitely meaning it as a cut when he says it's like a Hallmark movie.
It's about Christmas. I mean, it's about the horrible circumstances.
And then he says it's about Christmas, and then it's about horrible circumstances. So not really what I think of when I think of a Hallmark movie. And by the way, I know so much about Hallmark movies because Whitney watches probably every single Hallmark movie there is at Christmas time. Her and Brooke just absolutely love watching Hallmark movies. So that's how I know so much about them, because they're always on in our house.
The depictions of what allegedly occurred are nowhere near what really happened. Now, I will say this though, Patricia Arquette does it. I mean, I knew.
Okay, before he gets into the acting, the facts are nowhere near what actually happened. Let me know in the chat if you agree with that. He gives beauty for ashes, says, I didn't watch the trial. Should I watch that first? So I would say the story that is told in the show is probably a version of the events coming from law enforcement, victims, prosecutors' side, right? Clearly not Alec Murdaugh's side. So if you want just like the story, but if you want how it's actually tried, the arguments made, the facts presented, from my perspective, it's much better to watch the trial as like real cold hard facts. Probably more interesting, enjoyable to watch the show, but they're very different experiences in my opinion. Chat, let them know what you think. Neil said new trial ain't happening. We'll see about that. Richard Lowe said, can you do a deep dive on Corey Hopkins' motion and response? I'll have to take a look at it. I haven't had the opportunity to look at it at all yet. I've been out of commission today. I had a golf tournament this morning, and then I've been working this afternoon now. So I haven't had a chance to look at anything with regards to that.
Maggie very well. I think she does an extraordinary job of portraying Maggie. And the guy playing, I forget his name, he's a British actor, playing Alec, does a great job.
Jason Clarke.
And the guy playing Randolph Murdaugh does a great job. The young actors playing Paul and Buster are okay, but I think they're caricatures of Buster and of Paul. So I mean, again, these are people. I got to meet Paul after the boat crash. I represented him in that. So they were in this office every couple weeks, Maggie and Alec and Paul. And so, you know, I got to see them, know them. This is not based on seeing something on television. But whoever wrote this script needs to be drug tested.
Okay. All right. Tell us how you really feel, Dick. Whoever wrote the script needs to be drug tested. So he compliments some of the acting and some of the actors. But then he says some of it is just wildly off. And overall, the script is horrible. So he says, I see some people saying an investigative journalist wrote it. Okay. My opinion, right, from what I've seen, is it's more the theory of victims, prosecutors, law enforcement, which is the theory that won. And they say to the victors go the spoils, but also history is written by the victors. And it's so funny. I've read a lot about this and, watched some documentaries and even some movies on it that give a pretty good illustration of it. But it's so funny to think about how much of history we believe to be true could be embellished or hyperbolic versions written by whoever won a war or whoever won a battle or whoever was king or queen at the time, right? And then we just think of it as the true history that we think of today. And this show could be seen like that as well. They came out on top. They won. That's the very version the jury believed, which is the legally correct version and legally accurate version, at least as we sit here today. It's just kind of interesting to be living through historic moments.
Drug tested. Why do you say that? What's so inaccurate, Dick?
Well, everything. I mean, other than, Maggie and Paul were killed and Alec had a drug problem and stole a bunch of money. But for instance, in the television show, after the boat crash, after the bond hearing, which I'm depicted in, they allegedly go on a trip to the Bahamas, where everybody gets drunk, and they've got Alec out looking to pick up some skank, and Maggie actually looking at somebody. They never went to the Bahamas. There was never a Bahamas trip. And all of that is totally fabricated. And Alec and Maggie, I mean, again, every week or two, I see them in this office holding hands. And by the way, you don't think for this, where the rumor People magazine ran about her going to a divorce lawyer and there was, all kinds of problems. Of course, there was no factual basis for that. And if there had been, don't you think the state would have put that in as a real motive to kill Maggie?
So again, he's digging into some things that came out in the trial. To say that the court wouldn't allow them to, or the state didn't decide to, I think is a different thing than there's no factual basis at all. But of course, he's a lawyer. He sees it his way and he's going to argue it his way. So he says no factual basis at all. That, she was looking at a different guy and he was looking at a skank, I guess, on a trip that never happened. So says Dick Harpootlian. So again, there's some of the artistic liberties taken. And he's going to give some more about how the timeline was completely off. How does that affect the way you watch it, right? Because I think most people in the chat, not big fans of Alec Murdaugh, myself included. I do think there were some issues in the trial. I have major issues with Miss Becky and what happened afterwards. And again, we're going to dig into all that as they talk about it here. But still not a fan of Alec Murdaugh. And with that in mind, what did you think about some of the things that maybe they talked about? Maybe it didn't happen, but they're adding to the drama. From my perspective, one thing that's interesting about it is, kind of cheating scandals or them not liking each other personally anymore, or even Alec Murdaugh maybe finding out she was cheating on him or talking to a divorce lawyer or their relationship was breaking down, is not only a better motive for a TV series than I was trying to hide the secret of stealing money. It would have been a better motive at trial, which I tend to agree with Dick Harpootlian when that's what he's saying. They would have used that motive because I think that is a better motive. I think that motive makes more sense. I think jurors would buy that motive. Now, they didn't have to because they had all of the financial crimes that came in as the potential motive. But I think it is interesting that that's something that's developing through the TV series as a motive that is, I don't want to say a sexier motive. Maybe it's just more of a prototypical motive. I'll put it that way, right? We see this from time to time, people doing horrible things to their spouses, and that is the reason why. So it would lead you to believe that maybe that's the motive as to why he ended Maggie's life, which that's why Harpootlian is really pushing back on it, saying that did not happen.
They didn't have it because it doesn't exist. Totally fabricated.
Dick, have you spoken to Buster about his thoughts on the series?
I have not. Jim Griffin, my co-counsel on this case, has talked to Buster, and they're not watching it. but what they hear is, scurrilous. So again, this is just trying to monetize misery. And again, if people understand they're not watching something that's factual, the housekeeper who fell down the stairs in this
Gloria Satterfield
version, she is carrying their bags back up the stairs from the Bahamas visit, which was after the boat wreck. She'd been dead 2 years at that point in real life. I mean, you can have literary license to move things around, I guess, but again, nothing in this that I've heard or seen, it's based on fact. It's, again, well acted, at least by the main two characters, but not true.
And he's really pushing back on not true. And he's going on and doing interviews, making sure people know they believe it's not true. Okay. Julie said, "Hey, Dick, did you see the disclaimer for each episode that says parts are fictional?" Maddie said, "Peter, the writer admitted that to get the show down to the number of episodes allowed, they had to condense the timeline." Matthew said, "I guess my question is, who cares if it's fabricated? Does it legally matter? Can't the creators make it?" So here's what I'll say. There's some nuance in those three questions. I don't care at all if they had to condense a timeline or move some stuff around or, add some stuff that we don't know or fill some holes, right? Because there was a lot we didn't know. There's a lot we didn't know, or a lot some people may have said what happened, but can you actually confirm it? Can you prove it in a court of law? Probably not. That doesn't mean you can never make a show on it. Now, to completely fabricate things there might be an issue with that, or to do something was not true and put it in there as knowing something is wrong or fraudulent and putting it in the show and definitely trying to portray that it is true. I think you can have some issues with that with things that are based on true events. But I do think there are some legal gray areas when it comes to a show, artistic liberties, based on true events versus telling a true story, a mini-series show versus a documentary, right? There are all sorts of nuance with that. And I don't really have a problem with them doing it like this. What I hate about it is it going to affect a second trial if we have one? And I think that's why Dick Harpootlian is coming out against it, pushing back in the media, because he doesn't want to poison a potential second jury pool. If this case was dead and gone and all the appellate process has been gone and they've lost at every appeal, then I wouldn't care, right? Because it's like, okay, they're making a show off something that's interesting. Maybe they added a little bit to it. I love that they put a disclaimer, right? Disclaim as much as you can so people go into it eyes wide open, realizing this is not actually the true events. This is a version of the events that's made for TV, right? And as long as we all go in, I like for people to be well educated and understand what it is they're consuming. And if that's the truth, then watch it with eyes wide open and learn what you can from it and pick out what you think is different, or, oh, they didn't prove that, or, oh, that would be really interesting if that is how it happened, or, oh, that would make sense as a motive. Because sometimes jurors do that and they shouldn't. Jurors really shouldn't be adding a lot of facts and filling holes. They should only be making reasonable inferences based on the evidence, which some people have a wider array of what a reasonable inference is. I have spoken to some jurors after trials who have definitely figured out, like we'll talk about on here. Oh, they didn't prove this, they didn't prove that. And I'll talk to a juror and they're like, yeah, we kind of figured that because this happened, X, Y, and Z happened. And I was like, oh boy, taking kind of a big jump. And sometimes that's what they do. And sounds like that's what the show's doing. And I feel like Harpootlian wants to push back against that in case there is a second trial. Michelle said, but a cheating scandal alone wouldn't explain why he killed Paul too. Didn't Maggie's sister testify to some marital issues her sister was having? Off the top of my head, I know a lot of arguments surrounded this. I don't remember what happened in front of the jury and outside the presence of the jury. I know multiple arguments were made, but that wasn't the major motive. I know that. That wasn't the major motive. Peter, why would the movie use everyone's names for the characters they portray, except for the character who portrayed Russell Lafitte, the president of Palmetto Bank? Another name was used. I have no idea. Who's profiting off of the series? I have no idea, right? I'm not necessarily a news breaker here, right? And some people were asking me something else. What happened? Recently, people were like, oh, why don't you do this? Or why don't you get this person on or break this news? We're a reaction channel, really. We're an explanation channel. We're an educational channel. We're a question answering channel. We're a question asking channel. After things happen, we dig in, we break it down, we react to it, we discuss it together and try to learn from it. So I'm really not trying to be a newsbreaker. I listened to a podcast. I can't remember. It was like Adam Schefter, Adrian Wojnarowski, Shams, like all these people that are newsbreakers in the sports industry, and they're like, it's so competitive, it's so exhausting. You always want to be first. A lot of people hate each other or hate the big guy. You can get used and abused by your sources. You can be a mouthpiece inadvertently by people giving you information, and that can really be really hard for people that are constantly breaking news. But I don't even know how I got off on that tangent. But from my perspective, I do think that Dick Harpootlian is trying to go out on the offensive here to try and protect from a negative look at his client in case there is a second trial, which again makes me think potentially he's confident there will be a second trial.
And I guess, I mean, if you understand it's not true and it's for your entertainment, I guess it's fine. But if you're looking at this to help you understand what happened, you're wasting your time.
Dick, let's talk about the tragedy that's really at the heart of this, the murders of Maggie and Paul. At this point in time, is Alec Murdaugh still trying to proclaim his innocence?
Yes, he is, because if you look at the evidence as to the murder, not the fact he stole $12 million, if you look at the forensic evidence on the murder, which the jury, well, two reasons the jury never really considered. One was they spent 2.5 weeks hearing how he had victimized orphans and widows and paraplegics and just despicable conduct.
So even Dick Harpootlian agrees that is despicable conduct. How he victimized orphans, widows, and handicapped people for $12 million for his financial gain as a despicable human being. Scum. That's who does things like that. And Alec Murdaugh admitted to it and is kind of serving his sentence for that, right? That's what Dick Harpootlian is agreeing to. And I think that's smart. I think you have to. I think he obviously testified to it. But Dick Harpootlian is saying, if you take that out, which is irrelevant to ending Paul and Maggie's life, it's a much different trial. Much different trial.
Sort of reduced any ability to give him a fair trial. But more importantly,
we talked about that at the jump, that other bad acts, when those crimes come in and the jury is going to absolutely hate you for that, it's really hard for them to even think about the fact that you might not be guilty of another crime.
A judge, a former Chief Justice, had a hearing on the Clerk of Court, Becky Hill's interference, and found that Becky Hill had tried to convince jurors to vote guilty, that she interfered with the trial in a number of different ways. And so she fixed the jury. And so I don't think that we can say.
Again, now, as the as the miniseries might be from one perspective, the way he just explained the entire Becky Hill situation is definitely from Alec Murdaugh's perspective, that she fixed the jury. She pushed them or pressured them to vote guilty. Some jurors definitely said things that may make you infer that. Other jurors, maybe not. She was definitely talking about things and having contact that should absolutely be barred and never allowed. And I think if they prove that that actually happened, Alec Murdaugh should get a new trial because of what Miss Becky did. So, two major arguments, which we knew from the jump, and we talked about this from the jump. The financial crimes, was that the correct call to allow those in by Judge Newman? And number two, Ms. Becky's actions. Those are their two best arguments on appeal. And of all the appeals that we have talked about so far, Alec Murdaugh's is the one that we felt like would have the best chance of overturning the verdict. That's mainly because Karen Reed was not convicted the first time. If she was, that would have obviously been the best appellate chance. So now we talked with Michael Ufferman, who's an expert appellate lawyer in Florida, and he said a good chance of winning an appeal is 10%. So even an appeal that has a better than average chance, which I think Alec Murdaugh's does, is still just something more than 10%. It's not necessarily something that's a 90% chance of winning. So that's kind of what I talk about when I talk about good chances of appeal. Let's hear how Harpootlian puts it.
He got a fair trial, and I believe the Supreme Court will give him a new trial, the South Carolina Supreme Court, based on the testimony that Judge Toll elicited during the Becky Hill hearing.
I wanted to ask you about the status of his appeal. So for anyone wondering, where do things stand right now, Dick?
Well, it's been fully briefed. We filed our briefs. They filed their briefs. The Supreme Court has all of that now. They got it about 30 days ago. And, you know, these things take time. There's 20-something thousand pages of transcript and exhibits that if they, are diligent in this, and they will be, they're going to want to look at. So when will we get a hearing? If we get a hearing, when will we get a ruling? There's no way to tell. I'm hoping it proceeds quickly, but typically these things take some time.
Mm-hmm. We know that
So it's not going to be quick, but they're confident in their appeal. They've mentioned Miss Becky more than the financial crimes coming in as other bad acts. So it feels like they think that's their best argument. I tend to agree with that. I am wondering, will the appellate court even look at the fact that the other bad acts came in? Will they answer that, or will they just say, because of Miss Becky, we're going to reverse and remand back for another trial and let whoever the new trial court is make the decision on the other bad acts and whether or not Murdaugh and his team open the door? It would just be kind of an interesting legal argument that we're going to have to listen to happen again if this goes back for another trial. Pammer said, no one is suggesting the timeline is factual. It's based on Mandy Matney and Liz Farrell investigation into the boat crash, stolen settlements, etc. They ended up being right there for the M's. Okay, so seems like they're confident, mostly in Miss Becky. That's the most deplorable thing to me that happened in this case, that, if this doesn't get overturned in other high-profile cases, I think clerks of court and people in the know and on the inside might use their influence and power for their own gain and may negatively affect cases. So I would like for that to be a big deterrent to anybody else happening. I think the criminal charges coming for Miss Becky that she's dealing with will hopefully be a deterrent for that in the future, because I don't think this is something that's going away. I don't think high-profile cases are going away. I think other people will have the same opportunity Miss Becky had.
Alec Murdaugh, from the outset, has proclaimed his innocence, got on the stand, denied doing these crimes despite a mountain of evidence against him. In the prison,
What is the mountain of evidence against him? You remember?
So I do like that. She's like, Alec Murdaugh has this mountain of evidence against you, and lawyers are like, hold up here. Explain to me what the mountain of evidence is. Now, I think I could explain a lot of evidence from watching the trial, even without the financial crimes. I think I had an issue with the financial crimes coming in, and I would have liked to see what the jury did without the financial crimes. But if I'm going to say there's a mountain of evidence, I'm going to back it up with a mountain of evidence. Do you think the interviewer can back it up with a mountain of evidence against Dick Harpootlian? That's a question I have for you if you haven't watched it yet. Let's take a listen to how she backs up her statement that there was a mountain of evidence against Alec Murdaugh.
Has proclaimed his innocence, got on the stand, denied doing these crimes despite a mountain of evidence against him. In the prison,
What is the mountain of evidence against him? You remember now, on the night of the murders, the law enforcement there took no fingerprints, collected no DNA. There was never, their expert and our expert testified, whoever shot Paul with that shotgun would have been covered in blood and brains from head to foot. And yet 30 minutes after the time they allege that they were murdered, that law enforcement alleges, he's at his mother's house being greeted by her housekeeper, spick and span, not a speck of blood, not a speck of blood on the golf cart, in the car, in the shower, his clothes, no blood, all that, no guns, and no motive, to be frank with you. In addition to that, and probably the most critical piece of evidence that's been ignored, at the time Alec is cranking his vehicle at Moselle to head over to his mom's, at that exact time, Maggie's phone, found on the side of the road a half a mile away, was being thrown, based on the expert testimony, was being thrown into the woods. It came to rest at the exact time, based on the black box data from the vehicle, as he's cranking it up. Their GPS and that data shows that he had not moved. He was actually sitting in his driveway when that phone is being thrown into the woods a half a mile away. I mean, all these things, there's mountains of evidence that would indicate he's not guilty. There's no mountain of evidence that indicates he is. I mean, if you'll cite something to me other than him lying to the police about where he was, everything else, the physical evidence is consistent with his innocence.
Dick, you've been a fine advocate for him. I watched you try the case. He had fine lawyers. I said it all along. You did a great job advocating. But obviously, the jury believed that he did this. They believed all the evidence presented by the state of South Carolina. And there's a distinction.
They were fixed.
That's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to.
Look at this. I kind of love it. Am I bad for loving this? Is it bad that I love this exchange? First off, I still haven't heard her throw out what her mountain of evidence is. What she should say is, how about the kennel video? How about the timing of that? How about his voice being in the background there? How about all the lies that he told throughout, right? How about the fact that the clothes he was wearing earlier in the day, they never found those clothes? How about, I can't remember who he asked to lie for him. I think it was the housekeeper at the mom's house. And he came there at a different time and was like sweaty or something and seemed nervous about it. Like there was plenty of things she could have said. Now, if you want to say that's not enough for beyond a reasonable doubt, fine. If you want to say that the timing doesn't work, fine. Were there problems? Absolutely. If you want to say the financial motive, that came in the first trial, which I think is fair to bring up as part of the evidence against him. That's the financial motive, right? The motive to cover up the financial crimes. If you're going to say that, if you're going to say there's a mountain of evidence, at least have some things to spit back out. But he just kind of like is hammering her. And she's like, well, the jury convicted. It's like, correct. You're on the right side. So if you're on the right side, spit out some of the facts. That's fine, because the investigation sucked. The blood spatter stuff sucked. There were some issues with the timing, like how is this possible to drive X, Y, and Z in this amount of time when this is when the crimes occurred? The lining up of where the shotgun would have been versus where somebody holds it. I think there were some issues with that. But if you're going to say there's a mountain of evidence and you're on the right side and you've already legally won, the jury was with your position, you've got to have some stuff to say. You got to have some stuff to say.
Right. Is that there's a difference between someone being innocent and wrongly convicted versus someone who did 2 homicides and may not have gotten a fair trial because of potential interference from someone like a Becky Hill.
That was a weird question. I'm going to back it up so we can listen to it again. There's a difference between somebody who is innocent and wrongfully convicted versus somebody who did the crimes and Becky Hill fixed the jury. It's like, okay, clearly, yes, there is a difference there. Both of those people deserve a new trial. Are you saying that Dick Harpootlian is saying that he's not wrongfully convicted and innocent? Because that's exactly what he's been saying the whole time. A very, very confusing question to me.
Someone being innocent and wrongly convicted versus someone who did 2 homicides and may not have gotten a fair trial because of potential interference from someone like a Becky Hill.
Right. Well, there is, and I'd go with option innocent because look, one of the things you do as a defense attorney is you scrub the evidence, scrub it very thoroughly before and during the trial.
I know a lot of people don't like Dick Harpootlian. I've always kind of liked him. I think he's good. I realize you hate his client. I'm not a big Alec Murdaugh fan at all. But I thought he did a good job. I think he's listening to her question. He's like, okay, I'll take option innocent. That's what I've been saying. And I know probably some jurors didn't like him, and there are lawyers with really big personalities and take control of the courtroom. I know some lawyers that'll say things that'll make you kind of cringe, but can be really successful in the way that they practice. I personally think he's a good lawyer. I know there are people that disagree with me, and that's okay. Alex, easily the guiltiest of all the trials we've covered. I'll disagree with you there. If there's a new trial, does the prosecution change tactics or just rinse and repeat? It depends. I mean, I think a lot of it will be the same. But maybe they'll add some things. Maybe they'll take out some things that weren't necessary. I think the judge could affect what comes in and doesn't come in. And by the way, my reason for saying that I don't think he's the guiltiest of all the trials we've covered is because we've covered trials like Lori Vallow, Shabusiness, Daryl Brooks, Chad Daybell. We've had some doozies. That I think were worse. They're more obviously guilty than Alec Murdaugh.
Trial and even after, to ensure that you're approaching the case in the correct way. There was no evidence, no physical evidence that connected him to these murders. None. Not a fingerprint, not a blood spot, not DNA, nothing.
I would say there's definitely audio evidence, right? That connected him at the kennels when he said he wasn't there. Why would he lie about that fact? I mean, there's definitely some evidence that would tend to prove Alec Murdaugh had opportunity and he was at the right time. And then if you add the financial motive, like I can understand how people got there with Alec Murdaugh, but we have to realize this is Alec Murdaugh's defense attorney, obviously, and he's continuing to fight for his client.
Because, and let me tell you why this is. The police that arrived that night found him standing outside the house, not down at the dog pen, with a shotgun, which he told the 911 caller or the 911 officer, you know, I'm going up to my house to get a shotgun. I don't know what's happened here. I'm scared. So when they show up, he's got a shotgun in his hand, and there's two, and a wife and a son are dead. I mean, 99 times out of 100, I would agree. This looks like a domestic. Looks like he did it. But because of that, they never dusted the feed room where, never looked for fingerprints in the feed room where Paul was killed.
We remember how bad the investigation was, right, chat? Like we didn't forget that. We're not too old to remember how bad this SLED investigation was. SLED was SLED before Canton PD was SLED. At least for all of us outside of Canton that didn't know about the problems in Canton PD. It was bad. It was really, really bad throughout this trial and afterwards.
Never looked for DNA. The fire chief who arrived noticed there were tire tracks coming and going from the feet on the back exit, going from the dog pens, and cautioned law enforcement, preserve those. They may be critical evidence. Within 3 minutes, every cop in the county driven over them. They were gone. There was material under Maggie's fingernails. They somehow either lost it or used it in a test. There wasn't any more to test. We're not sure because they're not sure. They took Alex's shirt and tested it for blood spatter. They seemed to think it was a fine mist blood spatter, and were announcing for a year that was Paul's blood. Only during our preparation did we find a report misfiled in it was attributed to a lay witness, and in there was a report from the SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division lab, indicating it wasn't human blood. So, and Alec had testified he used to wear that.
And that was a big mistake, and something that happened at the grand jury is blood splatter, blood splatter, blood splatter. We heard so much about it, and it turned out not true. Allie B from Tennessee said, I think this is the first video I've watched where you aren't playing it at 1.5 to 2 speed. Peter, I don't usually play it for you guys at 2 times speed. For myself, 2 to 3 times speed. Yeah, but we have time today. It's only a 20-minute interview, and we have the full hour. So we're going to enjoy it at the slow pace. Alex prints would have been everywhere, should have been everywhere anyways. I agree with you, but if it was just Alec Murdaugh's prints or just the Murdaugh family prints or just people that worked there, I think it could have canceled out a lot of the arguments the defense was making. And I still think it's worth doing personally. And if you don't do it, you have to know that's going to be something a defense attorney is going to hit on. So you have to have enough to overcome that. And in this case, the prosecutors had enough to overcome the bad investigation, which I know Murdaugh's name was big time and he can control a lot of that. Guess what? Then you open yourself up to problems if you don't do your job, regardless of who it is. And guilty people can go free when you do a bad job as cops. That's important. He has good points about physical evidence, but there is evidence, jury agreed. There is a motive. His financial crimes are a motive for the M's. That's what the judge felt. That's what the jury felt. And that's what the jury agreed with at the end of the day and convicted Alec Murdaugh. Legally, he's sitting there as a convicted criminal. That's just how it is. That's the truth. Those are the facts right now. Doesn't mean he can't maintain his innocence. Doesn't mean his lawyer can't maintain his innocence and continue to fight for appeal and all potential remedies that might be available to him.
Shirt fishing, and when he caught a fish, he'd gut it, and that perhaps was fish blood. But we know one thing for certain, based on SLED, it wasn't Paul's blood or Maggie's blood or any human blood. So if we get a new trial and we try this case not based on, and he's pled guilty, by the way, to all the financial crimes.
Right.
And I don't think they're
he wants a cookie for that, right? As many times as they're like, well, you know what Alec Murdaugh did that he didn't have to do? He pled guilty to all those financial crimes. First off, yes, he did. But let's not act like there's not a legal strategy to doing that. Because then you can say things like, look, when he does something wrong, He pleads to it. He admits it, right? That's the kind of guy he is, but he didn't do this. And then, of course, federal prison versus state prison. So many different things going on there as far as strategy goes. And he really wants a cookie every time. He's like, look, I pled to these crimes. It's like, yeah, you did them for years and years and years and millions of dollars, people that trusted you, for people that needed you, for people that were less fortunate. It's like all the people that need protecting, like he said, the orphans, the widows, the people with injuries, serious injuries, paraplegics, whatever it may be. Those are the people you took advantage of, the most disadvantaged people. Oof. Rot, my brother, rot.
Relevant. And by the way, in final argument, the state told the jury this the whole thing they'd raised about getting all this financial misconduct in for motive. You don't have to consider motive. You shouldn't consider motive. So it'll be a different game. And based on the physical evidence, he should be acquitted.
Dick, you sound like
it might not be a different game. It might not be a different game, right? It really might not. If all that still comes in, he loses every time if the financial crimes come in my opinion.
You're ready to try the case again. If he gets a new,
he should be acquitted.
Dick, you sound like you're ready to try the case again. If he gets a new trial, will you try it?
Oh, absolutely. Jim Griffin and I were talking yesterday, and we think that he will get a new trial. Now, I've been wrong before, but if he does get a new trial, we're absolutely representing him. And I talked to Alec.
There's your answer to that. Are they still going to be on the case? Are they going to be the ones trying the case? How many of the prosecutors will be the same? Newman's retired, so I think we'll get a different judge, unless they have some kind of special circumstance there. But he will be trying the case with Jim Griffin, which if I'm Alec Murdaugh, that's a good thing. Too lazy. I was not convinced Alec Murdaugh killed them. Financials, yes, but I didn't think they had enough evidence for Paul and Maggie. Plus, couldn't figure out how he could have pulled it off. You're not alone, okay? There was a lot of people commenting this during the trial. And while our chat's vote was ultimately guilty, it was more of a split than you may have thought. And the people that hate Alec Murdaugh really, really, really hate Alec Murdaugh. So I get that. Hate is a strong word. I try not to use it. I really, really, really don't like Alec Murdaugh as a person. And I think he deserves to rot in prison for the rest of his life. But I do think there were issues in this trial.
Day before yesterday, and he's enthusiastic about clearing his name.
You know, I want to talk to you about that because I know that he's expressed his disappointment at the Hulu series, but his name was mud long before the series was even a concept because of all.
She's like, he was cooked long before Hulu doubled down and cooked him again. Sandy said, how could you not consider motive as a juror? Well, that's kind of the thing the lawyers like to say, like, pretend like you didn't hear that. Because once you hear something, you're obviously going to consider it. But legally speaking, Sandy, what he's saying is prosecutors don't have to prove motive. They don't have to prove motive as an element of the crime. So if you can't figure out what the motive is, you can still convict. You don't have to have a motive to convict somebody. So I think that's what he meant. But Dick Harpootlian's like, they threw all this out there for the jury and they were like, oh, but don't consider it, which is like, how do you not consider something that important? Lafitte not named because he still had a legal case open. Okay, that's a good point. All right, here we go. I mean, but I think there are other people that were probably named that still have certain things still open or potentially being affected by that. But
all of his convictions for this egregious conduct. And so I'm wondering, Dick, as you sit here this morning talking with me, do you have any regrets about agreeing to represent him?
Hell no.
I didn't pause it before the hell no. I don't think there is a legitimate, good, strong-hearted, constitution-loving criminal defense lawyer that would ever say yes to that. That would ever say yes to that in the way that this case has gone and this trial has gone and the accusations, even the conviction. This is their job. This is what criminal defense lawyers do, representing the worst of the worst, either by accusation or by admission, right? This is the job. People are going to hate us for it. People hate. It's not just criminal defense lawyers people hate, by the way. People hate all kinds of lawyers. I have my friends texting me. It's like, somebody didn't send you this email because they probably think you're going to bill them for it. And I don't even bill hourly. But he's like, that's what they think of lawyers. He was joking, but people hate lawyers. We already know. You're not surprising us when you tell us you hate us, or there are other people that hate us, or we're the reason your insurance is so much, or we're the reason it's so expensive to run a business, or we're the reason that you have to have extra security or extra lighting, or the floor mat down, or the slippery when wet sign out, or you have to put seatbelts in cars and now it's more expensive to make cars. We don't care. We don't care. We fight for people. We do what people can't do for themselves. We're mouthpieces. We protect the Constitution. We protect people even though they don't know we protect them, right? Everybody hates lawyers till you need one. It's just true. It's just the truth. But his answer was awesome.
To represent him.
Hell no. I mean, I've got a book coming out. There it is, right here.
He's like, hold on. I've got a couple copies right here on my desk. Look at the interviewer's laughing. She's like, that's funny. Here we go. Plug your book.
Dig Me a Grave. It's the story of a serial killer I prosecuted in 1983. Killed 14. Last one was a guy he killed on death row. He executed somebody on a contract. I've been doing this for 50 years. And I am a trial lawyer. Like John Adams was a trial lawyer, the second president of the United States that represented the British soldiers in the Boston Massacre. Abraham Lincoln represented 22 people accused of murder. I'm a lawyer. I'm an advocate. I've prosecuted. I put that guy in the electric chair. I've defended death penalty cases. I had one executed. I'm an advocate. What I'm telling you here, though, is my advocacy here is based on what I have seen, lack of and the presence of evidence. I have no regrets whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I'm just giddy about doing it again.
I can tell. So let's ask you a couple questions before we have to let you go about Alec Murdaugh in prison. People wondering what kind of experience this is for him. What kind of prisoner is he? What can you tell us about that, Dick?
Well, he's been the perfect prisoner. He's got no disciplinaries. He does what he's told to do. He helps people because he's a lawyer. Other inmates always ask him about legal issues. He has acclimated to prison life. He keeps himself physically fit and reads. As you indicated earlier, he hasn't had an opportunity to watch much educational television because they're very limited. But I think he's making the best of a very bad situation. And by the way, he doesn't blame anybody for him being in prison. He understands he's in prison because he stole a lot of money from people who trusted him. And I don't think he regrets pleading guilty. And I think he understands he's paying the price for what he did.
And what about the murders? Does he not accept responsibility for committing those?
I don't know how many different ways she can ask the same thing. Like, yes, he still maintains his innocence. He is not going to admit to that. He doesn't care that he's been convicted. He really doesn't. Joanne said, Peter missed the last two lives, craving for a lawyer you know. Well, glad you're here, Joanne. Glad you're here. And yeah, I was going to actually record this, and John was like, just do it live. I was like, all right, we'll do it live. Forget it. Let's do it live.
No. And he's not going to.
And again, every time, emphatically, the answer has been no. No, no, no. Everybody hit that like button. If you guys haven't yet, please take a second and hit the like button. Maddie said, speaking of a lawyer, Peter, can I email you about a medical negligence case? Yes. lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. Send me an email if I can't help you with it. I will do my best to connect you with somebody who can. I can't always connect somebody. We handle personal injury, wrongful death cases, car accidents, truck accidents, things like that. All over the country, we have lawyers barred in different states. It can waive in different states, but we can't take every case. And sometimes there are issues as to reasons we can't take cases, especially in certain jurisdictions or certain kinds of cases. But I still will try to. I have a lot of lawyer connections, people that I know all across the country that I can try to connect you. But either way, I will do my best. Is it No Shave November, Peter? Nice stash. Yeah, I like to do this once in a while, keep people guessing, keep you guys on your feet. I like all the comments. People are like, the ones that hate it, the ones that love it. It's always fun. It's a good little, I get bored, sometimes, and since I never am going to cut my hair short again, probably, I never say never, right? I like to do some fun facial hair once in a while. At this point, when I shave it off, my kids are all like, whoa, which my dad had a beard literally my whole life. And one time he shaved it off. And we were all like, never do that again.
And he shouldn't.
As a lawyer, you know that the jury has spoken, and legally he has been held responsible for those murders, even though he may personally refuse to accept it.
I don't, it's like a little bit cringy. She's like, legally he's been convicted. Harpootlian's like, okay, you asked if he admits responsibility. You asked if we are still maintaining his innocence. You asked if we continue to fight it. You asked which option is it? Somebody who did it but deserves a new trial or somebody who's innocent? I said I choose option innocent. And now she's like, the jury's spoken. We agree. The jury has spoken. Legally, he is guilty. That doesn't mean that he needs to say that he did something that he still says he didn't do. And that I have, as his lawyer, have to say it. That's not how that works.
Well,
Dick,
I mean, and that's
go ahead,
a very, I mean, look, I understand when juries speak. Trust me, I've had juries speak to me at least 600 times over the last 50 years, criminal and civil. I understand the sanctity of the jury verdict, but I've never, ever, ever had a jury that somebody tried to fix. And so in this case, I don't.
And again, everybody that wants to hate him, 600 jury trials. I think that's what he meant. Unless he meant multiple jurors on certain trials. It's a lot of trials. It's a lot of experience. A lot has happened that he has seen, heard, and experienced. And he said never has he had someone try to fix the jury. And I think he's using inflammatory language on purpose to really show how big of a deal this Becky Hill thing is and how the Supreme Court of South Carolina really needs to take this seriously. And we can't have this happen in our state. I see people hammering the interviewer. I know I've seen her before on court TV. But hey, at least she brought him on. At least she let him say his piece. She asked him questions that she knew he was going to disagree with. That's more than some interviewers do. Was it the best questions? Probably not. Was it exactly what I would have asked? Probably not. But I found it, I'm glad I got to watch because I learned from it and I enjoyed listening to him explain what's going on from their perspective.
Ever had a jury that somebody tried to fix. And so in this case, I don't think you can say the jury has spoken or spoken fairly. And their testimony, I mean, one of the jurors testified that Becky leaned on her to vote for guilty, not believe Alec. And she.
Michelle said, I mean, you were low-key criticizing her. Absolutely. I'll criticize whatever I hear. One question, one answer, something somebody says, the way they say it. But like, as their whole body of work, I don't criticize somebody's whole body of work if I don't know it. That's, I guess, what I'm talking about. People are saying they really don't like her. I don't know. At least she had him on, right? If Court TV is prosecution leaning, at least she had him on. At least she let him, say his piece. And if you are going to interview somebody and you don't agree with them and you have questions you want to push back, at least you ask it. I don't think they were the best questions and I think they were repetitive, but it wasn't like a softball interview where she was just like, yeah, you're so great. I agree with everything you say.
Indicated to a vote for guilty, not believe Alec. And she indicated to the judge that while she voted guilty, she doesn't believe he's guilty. That's number one. Number two, in this process of the testimony taken in the hearing, Becky Hill told several people that worked with her, that they testified, she was writing a book about the case, wanted it to sell a bunch of copies so she could buy a lake house, and that the only way it would sell a bunch of copies is if Alec Murdaugh was convicted. She had a pecuniary interest in fixing the jury. Never heard of such a thing. I mean, it's, I guess people look at these movies and whatever and say, boy, this is a screwed up part of the country. And you know what? It is a screwed up part of the country. I mean, it is, I live in Columbia, right in the center of the capital city of South Carolina, and we're aghast at this kind of activity on the part of the clerk of court.
There should be no.
So, I mean, that was a pretty big statement about that part of the country. What do you guys think? I know a lot of people in the chat right now are from that part of the country. Do you agree or disagree? Jules said, hey, Peter, you should do a Movember next year. Raises money for men's mental health and cancers by growing a Mo for donations. Hey, we could do that. John, why don't you make a note of that, or Kelsey, make a note of that? Maybe we can do that next year. Is it usually if an appeal, new lawyer, but if a retrial, same attorney? That's really dependent, because there are, like, my dad has done a lot of his own appeals as well. So there are some lawyers that do their own appeals, especially in criminal. Civil, I would say it's almost always a different lawyer for the appeal and then the same lawyer for the retrial. Criminal, more than civil, the same lawyer will appeal it. But yeah, oftentimes you'll get an appellate lawyer to do the appeal. And then hopefully if you have enough money, right, and you can afford the same lawyer, then the same lawyer will do the retrial. That would be ideal. That's usually best case scenario, unless you think the lawyer sucked the first time around. You don't want them to come and represent you again. If there's another trial, who will pay for it? I mean, either Alec Murdaugh, a family member, I don't know. Maybe a book deal. Maybe the lawyers will write a book and get some money from it and, keep living off that. I don't know. I don't know who's going to pay for it. It's always hard to tell what's going on in the background unless you know. Francis said, I didn't get an alert. That sucks, Francis, but I'm glad you're here now. At least you didn't miss it completely. And we get to talk just a little bit and you can go back and watch the rest later. We're almost done.
No interference from the clerk of court. You're absolutely right.
The clerk of court.
There should be no interference from the clerk of court. You're absolutely right, Dick. The jury process is sacrosanct and every single defendant deserves a fair trial. That is true. And Alec Murdaugh deserved to have a fair trial. So I'll be curious to see what the ultimate decision is as to whether Justice Toll applied the correct standard in making the assessment earlier about whether or not there was that interference, which, as you know, would determine whether he gets a new trial. Tell me, in the meantime, are you visiting him in prison? Have you gone to see him since he's been in?
I think I've been to see him twice. He can talk to us by phone 2 or 3 times a week, and where he is, I guess I'm not supposed to say where he is about 3 hours from here, and extraordinarily difficult to get into. It's once you get there, it probably takes 45 minutes to go through security, and then you have just a few moments to see him. We have much more in-depth discussions by phone, and so we talk. He and Jim and I talk to him. We talk, at least once a week.
How about
let me say this,
Dick? Oh, go ahead.
He's
please.
not. Let me make this clear. Sure. I don't want your viewership to think he's my best friend. He's not.
What? Why don't you want them to think that, Dick? Why don't you want them to think he's your best friend? But he does talk to him a lot, and he's like, yeah, we talked to him. I've gone and seen him a couple times. He's like, this guy's not my best friend. Don't get it twisted. Gringa said, isn't it better to get an attorney who specializes in appeals? So theoretically, yes, but I will say, like when we've done our own appeals, we know the trial so well. We know the issues. We know the problems. We know which rulings were horrible. We know what prosecutors did. We've been really successful by percentage, way better percentage than just general appellate lawyers, and better percentage on our own cases that we've done appeals on. We've also done criminal appeals on cases that were not ours at trial, and we've won a couple of those too. But if you have the lawyer that was trying the case and they've done appeals before as well, sometimes that can be better than getting a different appellate lawyer. It all really depends. But generally speaking, especially on the civil side, I will say yes. I think I don't know. We've done some of our own appeal defense, like when we win and they appeal and it's kind of an easy one that we know we're going to win. We've done that. Generally, you want a lawyer that specializes, of course. But you'll have to see what kind of experience your lawyer has in that. I'm from the South. About the series, I just have to say, calling everyone Bo is not a thing. I'm from the South, I guess. Is Florida still technically the South? And I don't know so many things that have to do with the South. All right, here we go. Let's hear him talk about why he's not best friends with Alec Murdaugh.
I want your viewership to think he's my best friend. He's not. He's a client. But I think he's a client that didn't get justice. And that bothers me.
As it should for any lawyer. That's like a good advertisement for Dick Harpootlian. It's like, this guy's not my friend. He sounds like my friend because you guys get it all twisted. And you think just because I think somebody deserves a fair shot, they have to be my friend. No, I think your friend deserves a fair shot. I think everybody, your enemy, deserves a fair shot too. That's the point of being a lawyer. That's something we preach on this channel. They don't have to be our friends and our family members to deserve a fair shot, but sometimes that helps us visualize, oh yeah, everyone does deserve a fair shot because that's what I would want for my friends and family members.
Understood. Dick, tell me, how about Buster? What is their relationship like now with him being imprisoned and Buster moving forward without his mother, Maggie, without his brother, Paul?
I mean, I think, they have a good relationship. They talk by phone. I don't think Buster goes to the prison. much. I'm really not read into how many times he's been down there. Buster got married this past summer to Brooklyn, who sat with him through the entire trial. And he'd been dating long before the murders. So he got married. He's got a job. She's a lawyer. She's got a job. I guess they're trying to do what every other married couple tries to do and get through life. And you know, I think he loves his father, and he talks to his father and do anything to help his father.
Yeah, that's evident. He's very supportive of him. It's a terrible position that Buster has been put in. Very, very sad. Dick Harpootlian, thank you so much for your time, for the discussion. Please keep us posted if you have any more information about the next steps for your client, if there's any word on him receiving a new trial.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for having me on.
Certainly. Thank you kindly. Take care.
All right. And that's the end there. Beth said his other attorney is/was definitely a friend. I do agree. I think Jim Griffin said he was a friend. I think Jim Griffin showed up to the house that night. And then they brought in Dick Harpootlian. And I think Jim Griffin, did he have appellate experience or was it federal? Cameraman, we have covered so many cases that they could start to mesh together in my mind. Maria said, off topic, but have you watched the Perfect Neighbor documentary? I have not. Do I need to put it on my list? Let me know, chat. It happened in Ocala. The lady convicted of M is now suing the children of the woman unalived. How? Thanks. Oof. I don't even know. I got to take a look at that. Matthew said, was nice to get the Lawyer You Know newsletter this morning. That's awesome, Matthew. Thank you. That's our first one. We're trying something a little bit different, trying to keep people up to date, give some more member discounts, do some giveaways. We're giving away a $100 Quince gift card, one of our sponsors. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be something a little bit different, a little bit new and additional. If you are a member, you definitely need to join the newsletter as well to not miss things in there. And it's completely free if you want to join the newsletter. The link is on our Instagram and Twitter. If you go and click it, I think that's the easiest way to do it. So thank you, Matthew, for that. Yeah, so a lot of people saying it's crazy. Okay, I'm going to have to put it on my list. I got Murdaugh. I haven't finished yet. I'm watching Mayor of Kingstown, which again is brutal because I'm all caught up and the rest of the series is not out. I finished All Her Fault. Holy crap, head spinning there. Watching a couple things with Wit. And then we've already started watching our Christmas movies. There's just so many. And our kids are so busy that, we watch them whenever we get time, all four of us at night. We've started watching Christmas movies as well. John said people can subscribe at lawyeryouknow.com as well. Okay. So you can go to lawyeryouknow.com if you want to subscribe to that newsletter. Faith, we've got you. Don't worry. If you don't have X or Insta, go to lawyeryouknow.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. Before you guys bail out of here, make sure you've hit that like button. Make sure you check YouTube. And if you think you're subscribed and you're not, hit that subscribe button. If you're not subscribed, you should be. So hit the subscribe button. You guys are the best. Until next time, I am out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.